Fred?
Time do you have?
Huh?
Time do you have?
She just
We
mentioned.
got
Fit.
time, it's
She
time.
just-
Yeah.
She just
All
motioned.
right. I didn't know for sure. I thought it was past time. I thought maybe she stayed in that. All right, let's call the meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, the 25th of September. We're here at the Civic Center for our regular monthly meeting. If you will, we'll stand for a moment of silence, followed by pledge of allegiance. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Here.
Ms. Albright.
Here.
Mayor Cappy.
Here.
Mr. Wallace.
Here.
Mr. Putnam.
Here.
I don't have anything at this time. Bill, you have anything?
No.
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 Moving to citizens' comments. Please come forward.
Joy Hutchinson, 1403 Highway 98. As all of you are aware, we've been raising money for the Moby Mat at Music in the Park and Philip. I would just like to say hats off to you and your department for helping us so much, especially to Pam. She always comes early, checks on us, see what we need. Just been a great help. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
How are we doing on that, Joy?
Doing great.
How much we have?
You know, Linda?
Last count as in the bank as of last Thursday was 5,500. Every Thursday we change the amount just before we have hamburgers, so I don't know what's in the bank now, but as of last week, 5,500.
And what's the total we need, Linda? 25?
15,000 is our goal.
15?
Yeah, you just sold your boat.
Any other citizens' comments? All right, moving to the consent agenda, we have two meetings. Do I have a motion
So
to
moved.
accept the consent agenda?
He moved, I second.
All right, are there any corrections or additions? Any opposition to the consent agenda? Let the record reflect as 5-0. Tina, you're up.
The only update I have is we're going to discuss the resolution to put the FERDAP grant for the pavilion at Parker Park into the capital improvements plan, which will gain us more points on our application. And then coming up, we'll have the P&Z meeting where we'll have a public discussion, as well as the regular scheduled meeting on the 9th, is that right? And we'll have, for that, we'll need that sole purpose meeting immediately prior to, which Adrian is helping to advertise, and then we can discuss it during the regular meeting. So that should go in by October 15th. And I did send out an exhibit. I don't know if it made it into the packets. It was last week, so you may have missed it. But one of the things that we kind of need to nail down is the size. I think we all can agree on the cost. I'm assuming we'll do 50,000, which is what the grant will allow. I mean, you can go above that, but typically they fund most projects 50,000 or less without any sort of match. But we should probably determine where we want to put the pavilion in the park and then a rough size to it. And I'm still working with Philip on the exemption request for the new seawall, or the seawall replacement.
Denny, do you know what size 50,000 gets approximately?
Philip and I talked about that. We have the pavilion in Sunset Park that we could use as an example, but that one was a few years back. The most recent one would be the one in the canal, but that's not going to be a true cost either because we put in a lot of city labor. And it might be that we get $50,000 in grant funding for materials to make a bigger pavilion, but then we would have to do something similar where we donate labor.
Yeah, the last discussion we had about the pavilion at Parker Park was that
we wanted to use the same type that was at Sunset Park to the right of the bathrooms, not to the left, but to the right. That footprint, that size.
Configuration.
I don't think you can make it too large.
What we're talking about, an events venue?
Yeah, that's what I was
Something,
A covered,
something more than just a.
Picnic area.
Yeah, right.
right, so under the
We wanna
grant,
I would like to see us have some architectural style to it, not just
okay,
a pavilion quote.
That was one of the ideas about using the one at Sunset Park, because it had that, I can't remember what type of roof it is on it. Instead of going with just a plain straight roof.
That's just got a gable end, a hip roof.
How about the one at Veterans Park they put up? It's kind of more for events, bands or,
the
Yeah,
one
that's what I was thinking.
That's
the big
beautiful.
concrete
Yeah.
kind of, and
Yeah.
metal structure that is at a slant, okay. So these are all things between now and the October 9th meeting, if we could kind of get a feel for what we want to do. I mean, for now, all I have to do is a conceptual layout that says this is where it goes and this is how much we're anticipating it will cost. So the 50,000, whether we're going to do that or whether the city's going to match, those are all things that you can have in mind and then we could discuss at the public meeting, so that I know how to fill that out. on
What
the
do we
grant
need to
application.
know before the October 9th meeting?
I guess really what we'll need to know is how much, whether we're going to have a city match and how much we're applying for in grant funding. So so $50,000, up to $50,000, there's no match required. We can request more than $50,000, but then there starts to become a match, 25%. And then I think it's above 150 to 200,000, it requires 50% match. So,
Have we approached the CDC about partnering with us to do that one? Do you know, has that
No.
ever come before the
It's never-
CDC?
No.
It needs to.
Well, I guess for us, then we need to have some ideas about what we want, what we want it to look like.
right, so that we can anticipate cost.
So if we go above 50 grand and we're giving 25,000, say,
Yeah.
are we any more likely to get a grant? Does that have any play in it?
In the past, grants 50,000 and under have had pretty much a straight, they just get approved. Now, I did notice in the last cycle, there were a lot more applicants. People are catching on to that. So some of the 50,000 and less actually did get cut in the last cycle. I don't know if it'll follow that same pattern, but in the past that has been the trend, that if it's 50,000 or less, typically it is approved if you score well. So
So we're better off doing that than going above, even if we're trying to match 25%, you think?
I would say, if we do we're trying to do the 3 different meetings. We have our resolution to put it in the CIP. We have the P&Z meeting, and then we'll have the public meeting on October 9th. So those all help us with points. So I think if we can get our points up, we could stand a chance at getting a
Yeah.
higher grant. The other option we could do to drive points up would be to do some public surveys. I don't know if we have time to pull that together between now and then, but it might be something we could send out or have at City Hall and then request that they be turned in by October 9th so that we could get it into the application.
I agree with the mayor. I think it's something that should look nice from Highway 98. It should be attractive. If there's any way we could bulldoze the restrooms down and put it right there, that would be fine.
There are places that are pictures or things like what I call a multi-purpose venue where you have events and have usually events venues are elevated. Where your typical picnic coverings are just ground level.
Yes, I could pull
Can
together.
you put something together just to give us either a website or somewhere we might could look at
Yes.
a more multi-purpose? It's hard to just put an events venue and not and it be just for that, when the need is also to have some kind of, at least in my mind, we need some type of covering.
Right.
uh,
Yes, I can do that, and then I can work with Philip to try to come up with, just for reference, what the pavilions we have in town have cost, so that we kind of have an idea. And actually, we did work on the Veterans Park, so I could probably get the cost of that as well, and we could include that. So before the October 9th meeting, as far as your packet, I
Yeah,
could pull that
just
together.
some things that would be, I mean, 50,000 for a truly events venue isn't gonna come
Probably not,
close.
right.
But if we partner up with some people, I think there's a push in town to wanna have something nice there. We might could find
Yep.
Okay.
some funds.
Will
Okay,
do.
great.
Thank you. Any other?
Any other questions?
Yeah, do we see a problem with the city doing the work like we did the other one? Because if we could, you mentioned, if we just spent the 50,000 on the materials, so that's something to think about too for the 9th.
Does the grant, do they
Allow
care if
that?
we spend it on just the
FERDAP,
material?
FERDAP allows, if you wanted to go above 50,000 and say that your 25% match was in labor, in-kind services,
Oh,
they allow that, but I would have to actually break that out and prove to them that that's amounting to 25% of the
Okay.
cost. But
Okay.
yes, that is allowed.
So we would need to know that by the 9th.
Yeah, you can't do it for 50.
Okay.
And Philip, was that one, was it city labor or was it volunteers?
Volunteers. Wasn't it?
The one at the canal?
City labor.
Okay, so if that fits in your schedule, that might be an option.
Uh,
We're looking at,
One where?
That's all gonna boil down to
I thought that was volunteers,
design
wasn't
and all that good
And how
stuff, whether we can have
complicated.
that
I
or-
didn't hear the question.
it?
okay,
One on Canal, on Canal.
whether
City put
the,
the poles up
Yeah, our portion was,
Yeah, then the
and poured the
volunteers,
and the concrete,
right,
the volunteers
and
finished.
then
it.
everything else was done,
by volunteers?
Yeah,
no, done, paid for.
Okay, so maybe something similar, like a
Private
combination might work of city labor and outside labor. So, okay. Thank you.
But I think the city can build. I think we've got people in-house that could build,
well,
depending
just,
on what it is. I mean, you know.
yeah, the material
depending
used and all that.
on how it's laid out. We've got some good folks that have some carpentry skills to do that. And maybe some volunteers. All right, so this next resolution is the one that we're trying to do for the FERDAP grant. Okay. All right, next is Resolution 2018-08. Do I have a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Second. Have a motion and a second. Any opposition to reading? Please do so.
Resolution 2018-08, a resolution of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, adopting a 5-year schedule of capital improvements for the City of Mexico Beach and expressing intent to submit certain improvements for grant funding.
Do I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any opposition to the adoption? Let the record reflect the 5-0. All right, moving to other business. First is the contract for the interim city administrator. So Nick has done his handiwork with some 4-page agreement here.
He's a lawyer.
And assuming that we are in agreement with the language, the only blank I see is the hourly rate. And everyone received the email from Adrian giving the request from Ms. Castro. Discussion?
What was that? I didn't see.
$35 an hour.
35?
We had
So you
We
waited,
had agreed to 30, up from 30 to 33.75, I believe, I'm right. And she countered that with 35. And our discussion was that we would bring that to the city council. That was over and above what we had agreed to. So that's the reason that one blank is in there. Plus, we did not have we had an agreement for the, we have an agreement for the administrative position, and I thought he would just change that to the interim and save us $1,000. So we have,
That's probably right. So you're waiting for a
we're waiting
motion?
just for discussion on, the language in this is new. I had not seen this.
Me
Like I
neither.
say, I was thinking we were gonna use what we did before, about just taking that agreement and making it an interim agreement, but that didn't happen. But again,
We couldn't use the old agreement as this is a contract position, not an employee.
Oh,
that was a contract for, it was also a contract. It just, again, that's here to there. That's just, this is what we have. If we like it, we need to fill in that blank and move on. Oh, and also, I guess, the date. Put the other blank at the top, which is the date that we're agreeing to this.
Well, I have no problem with $35 an hour.
I don't either.
Oh, either it's a short-term situation. We've got
You want
9
to make a motion?
applicants.
Sure. Anybody else want? I didn't mean
I'll
to
second.
cut, I didn't mean to cut you off. I make a motion that we pay Tanya Castro $35 an hour for interim administrator.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
yes.
Mr. Putnam?
Yes.
Okay, then we can prepare this for fill in the blanks.
On the date.
The date would be today,
Well,
wouldn't it?
yeah, may as well, we could, I mean,
She has not seen this yet either. This came this morning. So
Oh.
we can move on with the number.
yeah.
And finalize
Well, she
this
won't
later.
be until, I think she said Monday,
Mhm.
she'll be back, week from yesterday. Well, then we still have to present this to her, and we
And
can
then
do
change
that
the
Monday
date.
morning and,
I don't see any issue. It highlights all the concerns she had, but she has not seen it.
well, she didn't have but one concern. And
Yeah,
that was
the
the
money.
liability.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
liability.
money was not like a overly concern, I mean, that wasn't a big discussion. It was just a matter of let her think about it. And she called Adrian back and said she just thought that it was, one of the things she was concerned about was FICA, which is 7.5%.
So what about liability?
As a contract, she wanted to be sure that she was covered, and she is. I mean, we knew that then, and she was comfortable. She just wanted it to be in writing. That's
Oh,
all.
okay.
That's
All
it.
right, gotcha.
So, then what we can do, can we send this to her by email? And just give her, so that, with a note, please let us know?
Yeah, I've talked to her yesterday twice, so she's able to be reached.
That's what I mean. Well, at least we can send it so that we won't be sitting here Monday morning and not know. All right, so we can date it,
Could you contact her today? And she
and
could
send
say,
it to her,
okay.
and then we can sign it and have it ready for her signature, if that's all we
Yeah,
do.
I agree. Yeah,
Okay,
right.
good enough?
Good.
Good
Okay,
move.
moving on. Mr. Wallace, you're up.
Excuse me. I think it's time the city had a full-time code enforcement person and that we paid them a respectable wage and we attempt to get someone that's going to stay with us for a while, which is difficult to do from time to time. But that's pretty much what I had to say. And it's up for discussion, of course, because this is the only place we can discuss it. So let's discuss it.
I tend to agree with the part-time person, and a lot of times with the age of the person, and with probably not a whole lot of pay for a good bit of work, it's just easier for them when things get tough, I think, just to walk away. If you have a full-time person, I think they'd tend to stay. I think with the growth too that we've seen and possible that may be coming, that it probably, we need to go back to a full-time code person.
I know, over the years, sitting out in the audience, sitting up here, we've had a lot of code enforcement people, predominantly part-time. They seem to have lasted short periods of time, with frequently the interim before we get a new one almost equal or longer than the time they're working. One of the things that, as I've talked out there and here, our city has complained about, our citizens, is that we're not enforcing our codes. And it's very difficult if we don't have someone that's going to enforce the code, enforce them. And it's very difficult then if we have interims constantly down the line to put something in place that's a standardized, if you want to call it, policies of how they're to work and working with our customers, much less than if someone comes to me and yells at me because I'm doing something that may affect my property in the future, making sure that that information is contained for anyone future that would be buying my property. I think it's really time we have full-time and put the proper structure in place so that we can help our citizens and help our city.
And I think it's time that we get more demanding. We've been really nice and sweet to everybody from a standpoint of us enforcing the ordinances. And it's ridiculous that we go by and talk with somebody about mowing their grass that's this high, and then a month later have to go back and talk to them again. I think in the near future, we need to look at the possibility of saying, hey, we've done this, and in the letter we give them, that we don't need to come back every time and redo this, because a lot of these people are the same people every time that we're going back to see. And consequently, we don't get their attention, and a lot of times the way to get their attention is through their pocketbook. And once we establish that, then the problems will seem to melt away, because the people in town will know we're going to enforce the ordinances and we're going to do what we need to do. I mean, I don't know the people I've talked with that say, why am I keeping my yard all nice and straight, and why am I doing everything I'm supposed to do, and then two doors down, this guy is just doing whatever he wants to do. So I think everybody sitting up here has seen that happen. It's not anything new. But in order to do this full-time person, and this full-time person does what he or she is supposed to do, the council's got to reinforce this. And as a matter of fact, in reading over some of the ordinances, I'm not sure we don't need to change a few and put some wording in there that will help protect and enforce the code enforcement person.
I agree completely. I think we need full-time, just a couple of, and I'm sure it's happened to anybody up here. Yesterday I went in to the city hall and Royce called me in and said, can you be code enforcer right now? And she said, because Mel and I have been picking up the slack, and Mel's not here, and this is a dilemma. What would you do? Well, that's not the way a city should operate. And she also said, Fred is the best code enforcer that I have ever worked with. So kudos to you, Fred. He said he just had a way of talking to people, and if they had a complaint, he would automatically hand them a sheet of paper and say, please fill it out. And I also had a neighbor, just another kudo for Fred. A neighbor was complaining about something, said, I can't believe how nice your code enforcer was, and he came back and he talked with me. So I do think that we need a full-time, because when they go out on this is what I'm assuming, I've never been in that position, but when they go out on a call and they look things over and talk to the people and then come back, well, their 4 hours per day might be up. When do they have time to keep the records straight? And I know Fred spent a lot of time organizing and getting things so it's convenient if you have to go back and reread something. So I think a full-time code enforcer, and I agree with Jerry, you know, we have to be consistent. You can't make exceptions just because it's my sister or my father or my best friend.
Or
It
they-
has to be consistent, period.
Or they've been here for 30 years.
Right.
And another thing, I think Mel and I might have talked about it may be time in this modern age that we go to something electronic so that he doesn't have to look back at a notebook or try to find a piece of paper that he did 2 weeks ago. And I'm sure, I think we talked, Mel, there are programs out there that,
So what does a program cost, software?
Well, you can, something like that, you can spend pretty much what you want, but you can get a basic package for maybe 3,000 to 4,000. Some of the more expensive ones, 9,000, 10,000, or 12,000. But for us, I think that the cheaper one would work just fine. And there'd be a great benefit to having things that not just a code enforcement officer could look at, but other people in the office in case there's a question.
yeah, just to be out in the field and be able to pull up. I can't even remember what I did yesterday, much less a week ago sometimes.
You
So,
played golf.
not
Okay.
yesterday, the day before.
Well, you know, I don't know if we need a full or part-time, I don't know, but I do know that tonight, we're approving the budget, that's an unbudgeted position. We have sat here and had ample opportunity to make budget adjustments. But give or take that, to me, we're soon to be looking for and putting in place a new city administrator. And I would very much like to see what the city administrator thinks about organizing our code person. Because I don't think putting someone in a full-time position unless they're properly directed, unless they're properly given, this is how we need to address that. I don't think just putting someone out there because they're now 8 hours a day instead of 4 hours a day is going to make any difference until you have someone sitting in that office up there that is involved, and now that we're changing to a different administrator that can look at the situation and put something in place that they think this is the best approach to that. Code has been a problem here, whether it's full-time or part-time. We've tried it. Fred's been a good one. Other people have sat at this table and said we've had great ones, and they've come and gone. So I would be for making that a priority with the new city administrator and not trying to go back today and change the budget to represent a full-time code position, given what we've already done with our budget. And let the person that's coming into this job as a city administrator tell us what they think would be the best way to deal with this.
I think we should also, I have no problems talking to a new city administrator, but a new city administrator, it's a good chance is not going to be local. Good chance may not have even be familiar with Florida and its regulations and have to come up there. We keep pushing things like this down the road, and our city is suffering by not having good services. Whether we decide to do it and then listen to a new city administrator who says maybe we don't need it this way before we actually hire one, that's one thing. But not having something from the council directing what the city needs, and then the new city administrator has to go with what he has, is totally different. I think we need the support from the council for how we want this to work with our city and how we want to serve our citizens. We can kick it down the road for 2, 3 more years and still not serve anyone.
We had full-time for a while, and then we cut it back to part-time. And that's been about a year, year and a half, 2 years, I'm not sure which. But in my mind, we have learned from our change that a part-time is not sufficient for this size city. And a new administrator is going to be over his head with everything else.
Well, then we hired the wrong one, if that's the case.
And, well, in any position, any new position you go into, you're going to be over your head
For the first 6
for the
months.
first, you have to find your, you have to look at your footing, you know, see what's going on in that. You can't come in and, unless you've been hired as a change agent, where you're gonna come in and bang, 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 change all these things. But
How
if
you
you,
gonna find the money? Where you gonna get the money from? with the
well, if
budget
we
coming
feel
up?
it's important enough, I'm sure that we will find it,
Uh,
like we do everything else. And
uh,
we're not looking at a full-time salary, we've already have a part-time salary in the
I'm just
budget.
saying, it's not budgeted.
Right, we already have a part-time salary in the budget, and so we really just need to find that part-time salary.
So you'd have to amend the budget right after we just approved the budget.
You know,
Yeah, I mean, it's
sometimes,
just terrible. I mean, it's,
So-
can't be any worse timing than to have gone thought we go through and come up with,
So
7
basically,
hours from the time we're gonna approve the budget to decide that we need to, all of a sudden now we need a full-time employee.
I agree, the timing
That's,
is
that's
bad.
just, why don't we just stick with what we have and wait till we review? It's obvious that the code position needs to have some better guidance in where we're headed and what we need to accomplish. I can't, that's just to me undeniable.
that's been needed for the past 10 years.
I've had discussion with the future interim person who totally agrees with this. And I think it's time, I agree, it makes us all look, especially me, since I'm the one that brought it up, a little ridiculous after approving the budget. Back when we were doing the budget, we didn't realize we were going to be without somebody either. But I still stand by the fact that we need to make it a full-time position. We need to pay a reasonable amount of money. I think $12 an hour, whatever we're paying now, is not enough. And I think we all need to demand a lot of attention from this code person and take up the slack. I don't know who's doing, are we doing any code enforcement now, Mel?
Not really,
No.
just as a complaint base.
Well, yeah, you know, I know a couple of yards I could lose my truck in driving through the grass. And this place on 15th Street, which I don't know. What does it take for us to, no, I don't need to bring that up now.
So if we go with if we stay with part-time,
No, I don't want to stay with
well, I
part-time.
don't either.
Well,
I'm
just
I'm
don't do
saying
it.
that- I'm
Well,
just-
let
I'm
me
just
ask you, if
saying
we
that because
organized it,
Al,
if somebody came in and gave better, and defined what they want to accomplish, to me, that's, I'm gonna say it for the last time, it's 10 times better letting somebody, whether it be Tanya or whether it be whoever else we bring in, give better direction than to come in tonight, because that's gonna affect the budget and the millage rate.
I think that
I mean,
instead,
you can't just,
What about that?
I
clerk?
just doesn't even
disagree
make- it's
with,
just
with
not-
waiting. I think that we need to at least say, if we feel at our standpoint on this table, it should be a full-time position, that we make that statement. I agree with the mayor from the standpoint then that when we hire this new administrator, because I don't expect to hire the new code person before we hire the new administrator, to make it a priority with him that we need this done and give him then at that point in time, since we haven't hired someone, of saying, okay, do we need it half-time, do we need it three-quarters time, do we need it full-time?
Well,
But we make the statement here that we.
We've
feel
got
needs
4
to be
people up here that all agree.
Well, then make a motion.
I
Let's
make a
move on.
motion
Let's
that-
just make,
Wait a
let's
minute,
just,
so-
we're just
If we don't
staying in the
hire.
hole, Jerry.
right.
Let's do.
No kidding.
We'll make a motion then. I mean, the floor's open.
If we don't hire, if we don't,
We
If
don't
we
have to
don't
talk
hire-
about it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's
Okay.
just saying the
If
same
we-
thing over and over.
but sometimes that's what you
Floor's
need to
open
do.
for-
Well, the only thing I
But
was
that-
gonna
sometimes
ask
that's
Let
what you
Linda
need.
talk.
is about
I
the
mean,
money.
that's why we used to have workshops, so we could discuss things without feeling like we have to make a motion right away. But
Well, I think we ought to be able to make a motion today.
I'm
So,
still talking.
oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were done.
No. But
I apologize.
if we're waiting for, whether it's the interim or the full-time, to make a decision on what, if we need a code enforcer, full-time, part-time, whatever that idea was, who's gonna take care of it before that?
Nobody.
Nobody. And you can't expect Royce to do it,
The city administrator would do
but, okay, so then when Tanya
that.
comes
Interim
in.
city administrator.
Okay, so when
would do that.
Tanya comes in, she can be the code enforcer, not a problem.
Wait a minute. We're going to come up with some money. That's the concern from the budget. We're going to have to amend the budget, or are we going to have money available because the interim person is not going to be making as much because of the fringe benefits, et cetera, et cetera? We're going to accumulate some cash there. Tell us about that.
Well, it's possible, but you're still gonna have to amend the budget. We can't do it tonight. It's too late. We're beyond, we'd have to restart the whole process, which means we don't have a budget the 1st of October. So it's gonna have to come as an amendment down the road. But using the city administrator, we don't know how long the interim's gonna last, so I can't tell you how much savings is gonna be there.
Well, you can tell us on a monthly basis how fringe benefits we're not paying that we're paying now.
Yeah.
How much would that be?
But you can't delegate that, you can't take that money and delegate it.
Without an amendment.
Yeah.
I know, I understand
We
that.
understand.
I just want to make sure we can do an amendment and be there. You know, typically, everybody up here and everybody out there gets tired of listening to us talk, 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 and taking 6 years to get something done. But that's because we're in the state of Florida, some of it. It was a lot simpler in other states. So you have something to say?
I don't have a simple, it's gonna take me some time to calculate.
Well, here's the way I feel about this. If the 4 of us agree, then the person that we hire needs to agree also. If they don't agree, you know, if I have something to do with it, I'm not hiring that person because I think we're absolutely right. And I don't have any problem saying we're absolutely right. We don't need to talk about it anymore. We just need to do it.
Well, it can be done at any meeting. It doesn't have to be at today's meeting. It can be
That's right.
done at any meeting.
Okay, I'm
I
all
mean,
right
as
with
long
it.
as you find the money and you can sell, I mean, you know, you can make the numbers match, and it doesn't, it's not a matter of whether, I totally
Well-
agree. If 4 of you think that's what needs to be done today, it can happen today. It's just that somebody's got to have the foresight to figure out the amendment process of, you just can't,
No, I understand.
So you can make a motion that we're in agreement, but we
we
can't
don't
make
even
any
need that.
decisions.
You don't need a
No,
motion.
I
we
think we do.
I don't think we do.
Okay.
You don't
Well,
need
make the
a-
motion.
I make a
don't-
motion.
Well,
that
but the
we-
motion to agree
It's not, it's
is,
just
is,
it's a
is
resolution.
simply not appropriate. It is,
I make a motion that we make the.
well, you're out of order.
Okay,
Rob, the chair doesn't recognize a motion for an agreement. If you want to make a
I'm making a
motion.
motion for
Well, that's
agreement.
what Jerry was gonna do until
I'm
I
not making
stopped
a
him and
motion
said
for
I was still
agreement.
talking.
I'm making a motion that we make the position, code enforcement, a full-time position on our books, as any position in a company can be. It doesn't have to be hired as a full-time if if the management feels it doesn't need to be. But I would like to put it on our books as a full-time position. And I make that motion.
Second.
A full-time position as we can afford and
It's
make
not-
an
it's not-
amendment.
As we
Never
can
mind,
afford
fine.
it.
We got a motion and a second. Call the roll. I don't even know what that means.
I don't know if I have the motion ready.
That we
Can't
make
get it
the
right.
position, code enforcing position.
Motion
as-
by Mr. McLaughlin, second by Ms. Albrecht, to make the code enforcement position a full-time position at the discretion of the city administrator and if the budget allows.
Sounds good to me?
Mr. McLaughlin.
Yes.
Ms. Albrecht.
Yes.
Mayor Kathy.
I'll raise a point of question. There's nothing in the motion about how it's going to be paid for. You can't, I mean, there's nothing there.
The
You
But
attorney-
don't
I'm
have
gonna
to-
vote no, and we're gonna move on because
Okay, that's good.
this is ridiculous.
Mr. Wallace.
Yes,
Mr. Putnam.
Yes. Okay. LDR, city administrator.
As you know, the job of running the city falls on the shoulders of staff. The job of the city council is to provide the policy, to give the guidelines to the staff. And now that we're at the cusp of getting our new comprehensive plan done, and by the way, they will be coming to the city council meeting in October to present the thing to transmit to the state. But that means that our LDR and our comprehensive plan will be in conflict. And as we all know, it's not just that issue, but there's a lot of ambiguity in the LDR. I'll cite an example from this morning talking to Royce. Somebody has a corner lot, they want to put up a fence. And the home faces, of course, one of the two corners. So then they have a rear yard and a side yard. But do they have two front yards? You know, how do you do that? You know, when it comes to setbacks, the LDR is clear, but when it comes to setting up a fence, it is not. So that's something that Royce and I are looking at and trying to scratch our heads together and get that laid out. But there are a lot of issues like that that needs to be addressed. We were counting on some technical assistant grant money from the state to help us pay for the redo of the LDR. And as you know, that didn't happen because we got a technical assistance grant the previous year for the comp plan. We almost have to sit out a year before we can get another one. So next year we would be qualified for it, I'm pretty sure. But the question is, can that process wait? Alara has given us her estimate to guide us through this process of $53,600. So I'm throwing it out to the city council about what you want to do at this point forward. You know, that's something we can take out of reserves, perhaps, or some other pot of money that might be sitting out there. But I think this is a very important thing to go ahead and complete. The quicker we start, the better off we all are, I think. So it's on you.
Okay.
what was the 53,000 for?
That's Alara's fee for guiding us through that whole process.
Is
In other
this,
words,
is this a point of information? Is that what you're
yes,
throwing that out for us to be aware of, that don't have that grant and we need to consider how
Right.
we're gonna move forward?
and again, we're not asking to amend the budget tonight or anything like that, like you had the previous discussion, but I think that's a very important discussion to have soon, and amending the budget soon to get this process started.
And she's been working with planning and zoning, and she has been a very valuable tool, hasn't she?
Without question, because she's been doing this her whole life, she knows what complies with state and what does not. She knows what needs to be changed because the state did a redo of everything just a few years ago.
And if we don't hire her, then is everything we've done for naught? Or is it still, then it would be on the turtle pace of trying to figure out what the heck we're doing?
Well, everything that we do, you have to refer to the comprehensive plan.
So,
And so if the LDR doesn't speak the same language, then there's a potential problem, not with everything, but there, occasionally you have to look at it from a different perspective.
Okay.
Thank you.
When does that decision have to be made? Okay.
It's
It's out there,
So,
it's out there, we're aware that there's no grant, we, like you said, we were hoping we would get the grant, we applied for it, we didn't.
So when did,
It's coming up soon, we'll need to decide, I personally would like to see us go through, at least get some of the comp plan revision and see where we are with that, and how soon we need to, you know,
so like,
how soon
if-
we need to move forward. We haven't presented the comp plan review yet.
Do we know how soon we could apply for another grant? Here,
It's annually,
annually?
and usually in the winter sometime, early spring is when you got to apply. And we just found out just a few weeks ago the answer, so it takes a
Yeah.
while.
so for us to wait to make a decision until we decide till we find out if we got a grant, I'm assuming we'll apply for, that's another whole year and a lot of
A lot
time
could transpire.
transpired.
Usually on those grants, curiosity's sake, if we were in the middle of doing it out of our pocket, and would we still be able to get a grant, in essence, backfill our budget?
That's probably not something they would look favorably upon.
Okay.
Any other questions? Any miscellaneous from anyone? Yes, sir.
Talking with Adrian and Mo about this morning, we found a truck for the Public Works. It's a boom truck that would allow us to more easily install the Christmas lights, banners, trim palm trees, things like that. But because it's $8,000, we went yesterday, we crawled all over it, we looked through it, we drove it. The lady was very kind, let us jump all over this thing. It seems to be a very good truck. The guys are very much in need of it and would like to have it, so I just wanted to bring it up today to let you know that we're looking at the possibility of getting it.
What do you use to trim palm trees now?
Last time we did it, I think it was 2 years ago, we had to rent a lift and it cost us it was right at $3,000 for that lift by the time we got through with everything.
Do we have anything in the budget that would allow us to buy?
Public Works budget.
You got that, yeah? You have that in Public Works?
We just talked about it this morning. We haven't, and then we came straight here, so we haven't had time.
Well, just
The issue is,
find the money.
yeah, the issue is fiscal year end.
Yeah.
We end this weekend's the end of our fiscal year, so
Right.
hopefully I can find something this week and do it out of this current budget, so we don't have to worry about it next year, but
I think it's a pretty good deal. And the city could use it.
I do have a question, and if I heard incorrect, we find it in this year's budget, it's over $5,000. So do we need to give some kind of approval if he can find it, since it's over $5,000? I
No,
know
it's over 8.
Yeah, I know, but
But it's not gonna cost us 8, it's gonna cost us 7,900.
Okay.
Well, are we looking at other places? I mean, if we're gonna look for a truck, are we looking at other places that have similar trucks?
We've looked at numerous places that have similar trucks, and I can assure you that
Well,
they're very expensive.
I wanna, I'm just saying.
This was privately owned, I think, Mayor.
So you
Yeah,
want, so you need a motion?
I don't think so.
No, no.
No?
Okay,
I think
that's
he's,
what I
I
was
think he's
asking.
throwing it out as just information.
Yes, sir.
That's good.
And
Okay.
Move on.
But if you find the money this week, you're gonna buy it this week?
approves of
Absolutely.
the
Okay, so it's not just information, it's what, okay,
So you
okay.
put a new decal on it?
police chief. Oh, excuse me, whoa. Any
No,
other,
sir, I'm done.
any other miscellaneous?
No.
Okay. Go ahead.
Just a few things. After the incident we had previous week ago, the officer involved shooting, I have an FDLE meeting with the state attorney's office tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. And I believe, I already received a phone call from one of the FDLE agents advising that everything's going to be fine as far as our city's responsibility. So everything seems to be going on well with that. We have an issue with the hogs on the east side of the city. FWC will not respond to any of those. Pretty much we're going to have to address it ourselves. Try to get with the base because they've had issues. We don't have a trapping ability large enough to capture the hogs. They are starting to root up the ground. We've received several calls from several of the residents on the east side of town, so we will address that individually. We had 2 more vehicles go down, and the first of the year, or budget year, cannot get here quick enough. During the incident where there was the officer-involved shooting, 2 of the officers commandeered the sanitation truck to continue responding to assist the officer in the call. The vehicles are in bad shape. So we had one of the officers come in on a day off and strip out some of the items from the cars that we can reuse. That will keep the cost down once we get the vehicles here. I have been in communications with a company out of Tallahassee that's putting some numbers together, but they will have access to the vehicles once the 1st of October gets here. And other than that, that's all I have to report.
Any questions? Thank you, Chief. Let's see, Fire Chief, what about Philip? You have anything?
Just wanted to touch on red tide. The latest report, whether I haven't come out with a full report yet, but Bay County is 5 to 25% lower than what it was last week, but Gulf County is 5 to 25% higher than it was last week. And I'm not, because we sit on that fringe of Bay and Gulf, I'm not sure which one to really follow. But I will say this: we have gotten 0 complaints about respiratory issues or anything like that. Just a few dead fish. But that's all I got, Mayor.
Mr. Adrian?
All I have is a reminder to everyone that our final budget hearing is tonight at 5:01 p.m. and we're closing out the fiscal year. And as of this morning, we have 9 applications for the full-time administrator spot. That's all I have.
Any questions? Mel?
This is my final regular city council meeting with you folks. It's been a privilege to serve the city council and the citizens. Mexico Beach is a wonderful place. I'm not going away completely because we're not selling our condo. My wife will remain here and continue teaching at Tyndall Elementary, where she is Teacher of the Year, by the way.
Oh, wow.
So I will be back on the weekends, so you're not going to get rid of me. I will be voting in the election come spring, so watch out. Also, the politics here is difficult for such a small utopian type place. You know, instead of contacting staff a lot of times, people would just come to a meeting and complain. That's gotcha politics, and that's not the way we should do things. So I haven't been a Rotarian for many years, but I do recall the 4-way test. In other words, what they say is that for everything you think, say, and do, give yourself this 4-way test. So I answered the first question is it the truth? The second one is it fair to all concerned? The third is, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, is it beneficial to all concerns? If you all live by that credo, it'll be a better place. Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Are there any announcements? Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
I'm gonna knock the back.